Hey, Cam Dunlap here, back in front of the whiteboard. I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about how the real estate market is changing and what that means to you and what it means to the country in general. It should be obvious to you by now, no matter where you live, that the pendulum is really coming off the stop. And what I mean by that is simply this. The real estate market is cyclical. And I look at it like a pendulum in a grandfather clock, sort of ticking and talking and ticking and talking. And so at any given day, the market is somewhere within that pendulum's swing. And I think it's arguable that for the last several years, the pendulum's been pretty well stuck on the stop over here at the buyer's market. Okay, it's been a buyer's market for a long time. And by the way, this little horrible drawing that I've done here is to sort of depict this pendulum. And this is how the market oscillates, or how to indicate how the market cycles. Okay, so we have a buyer's market here and we have a seller's market here. It's very arguable that we've had a buyer's market for quite a long time. And that's starting to change. So the pendulum is coming off the stop, meaning it's beginning to swing back toward a seller's market. Now, if you happen to live in California or Arizona or Nevada, or frankly anywhere where prices are going up in a very measurable way, it's important for you to understand that that is not a clear indication of what's going on nationally. It is not. Really, there are only a few markets where you're seeing any measurable appreciation yet. Okay, so for example, I'm standing here in upstate New York, and values around here really haven't changed much at all of late, but I also know, because I fund deals in many states, every state theoretically, but at any given time I've got deals funded out in lots of different states, so I know that there are places where values are going up rapidly. And that's how it works. You know, the real estate market on a national basis isn't equal. All right, so California and the Sun Belt kind of region tends to lead the charge in the upward swing, and then certainly leads the charge once the pendulum comes back off the stop, it starts going back the other way in the downward swing. So here in upstate New York, values aren't really changing all that much, but they certainly are in a lot of markets. And what I'm seeing is the bottom, in my opinion, the bottom is in our rearview mirror now. So what that means to us as investors is we need to change our strategies a little bit. We need to change the way we think, and we need to change what we do to match the opportunities that are currently in the market. Any successful real estate entrepreneur who's been around for a while understands that completely, that you have to be willing to change what you do as the market changes. So there were an awful lot of people who did very well in 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then when the market changed, they found themselves with, the floor pulled right out from under them. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to make money in that market, in that new market. They only knew how to make money in the old market, and they went away. Well, certainly some of them are going to be coming back soon. So I think it's important that you understand that change is good, change is inevitable, and when you change your strategy to match the market, you will stay ahead of your competition. Because again, most of your competition doesn't even understand the market's changing or what to do when they do understand it's changing. So the pendulum has definitely come off the stop. It is beginning to swing back in the other direction. So here's one big thing that I see happening out there. If you know me, you know I'm all about vacant houses. There's always lots of vacant houses. It doesn't matter whether it's a good economy, a bad economy, whether the real estate market is good or bad, there's always lots of vacant houses. However, how those vacant houses differ is kind of important and notable, because in a crashing market like we saw in 2006, 7, 8, 9, there is far more bank-owned vacant properties than there are privately owned vacant properties. And in a strong seller's market, there'll be far more privately owned vacant properties than there are bank-owned vacant properties. I hope that makes sense. So in a big buyer's market, when there's a foreclosure bonanza like we've seen for the last several years, and I frankly think we'll continue to see for a while, the abundance of vacant houses is definitely bank owned. So what's happening is we are starting to see through our funding, through my own deals, through our student partner deals and all of that, we're starting to see a lot more of the vacant houses being privately owned versus bank owned. Now, so there's, if you sort of took a cross section of the market, there'd always be some sort of a balance between bank owned and privately owned vacant houses. And that balance can get askew when you're at either end of the pendulum swing. But everywhere in between, there's pretty much a balance of some sort. So what we're seeing is we're coming back to that balance. There are more privately owned vacant houses now than there used to be as a ratio to those owned by banks. And so what that means is we need to change up our strategy. We need to go back to our toolbox and pull out a tool that for you and for a lot of folks has really been sort of set aside and not all that actively used for the last several years. And that tool is the skip trace. So if you think about it, a vacant house that's owned by a bank requires you to have, if you want to buy it, it requires you to have proof of funds, transactional funding or funding of some sort where you can actually close the purchase before you resell. And those two pieces become very critical. With private sellers, we don't need proof of funds. And because we can do an assignment of contract in most cases, we don't need funding to close. We can just sell the contract when we're wholesaling. We can just sell that contract to the rehabber and be out. Never go on title, never have to close, no A to B, no B to C. We sell the contract by way of an assignment to our buyer, and then he or she goes and closes with the seller. So we don't need proof of funds, and frankly, we don't need funding for privately owned vacant houses. But what we do need is the skip trace, because if you find a vacant house and then look at the public record and determine that it's owned by a private individual, well, they're obviously missing. Now, sometimes they can be easy to find, and that's great. But as a rule, what I've found over the 2 decades of investing I've been doing, what I've found is that the harder the seller is to find, the more difficult they are to find, the better the deal. And certainly the less competition you're going to deal with. So when the vacant house is owned by a private individual, we can find that out easily by looking at the public record. Now we need to locate that individual. If that becomes at all difficult, your competition begins to fade away. And what we do is we employ the skip trace, which is a powerful tool that very few investors ever know about, and that you either didn't know about before now or did know about before now, but either way, you know about it, and that's important. So again, the idea, and if you hang around me at all, you already know this, I'm all about staying ahead of the competition. So it's time to start using that skip trace tool again. And the place to do that is at findtheseller.com. Now, naturally, you probably know that I own that company, and we provide skip trace and other background research for our clients. And we've been doing it for in excess of 10 years now, and we're by far and away the best in the business at it. So when no one else can locate that missing seller, and you can, by using the skip trace at findtheseller.com, you separate yourself from the competition again. So on the bank-owned properties, if you're on board with me, you've got proof of funds and funding, so you leave your competition in the dust. And on the privately owned vacant properties, you've got findtheseller.com and the skip trace, so you leave your competition in the dust. Isn't that exciting? Isn't that what it's all about? So I'm seeing more and more activity at findtheseller.com. For the last several years, we've sort of chugged along at a steady pace in terms of volume and all of that activity. But it is undeniable over the last, maybe 3 to 6 months, we've started to see a real uptick in activity. And it's no surprise to me because, again, more and more of the vacant houses out there are owned by private individuals. So if you're in need of a skip trace, check it out at findtheseller.com. We've got lots of exciting stuff coming for findtheseller.com in the very near future. You'll be hearing about it. In the meantime, that is your number one source for locating missing sellers when no one else can. So get out there and take advantage of the fact that the pendulum is swinging, and make sure you go to www.findtheseller.com for your skip trace needs, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.